Okay, so in between videos, all I did was I went up to File, I chose Save Scene As, and I named this scene Level 1. That's what this icon is down here. So if Unity crashes, we won't lose our work now. I'll explain later the relevance of what a scene is. But just know for now that that's how Unity breaks up games and applications. It breaks it down into scenes. Second thing I did is I just did a little more copying and pasting. I extended the area out a couple more units. And now we're going to add a ramp. So let's go to Game Object, 3D Object, Cube. We'll slide over. And we said that the position for the center would be 0, so we'll keep it there. And it's looking like, well, I'm not going to set the Z yet, and you'll see why. So if this is a ramp, it needs to be much wider, or longer rather. So let's make the Z, say 6. That way it's exactly 3 times the other cubes. The other cubes are 3, so we'll make this 6. So now we have to line this up. So let's make this, let's put it like a half of a 45-degree angle, so 22.5. So rotation, negative 22.5. Lines up nice. Now, what we're going to do is certain things work automatically for you when you're in a 3D environment. Certain things do not. And what we need is, in this type of game, we said we need to keep the sphere and we need to keep the camera perfectly synchronized, perfectly aligned. So rather than just letting the slope take the ball, we're actually going to fudge it a little bit. And the reason why is because we need the ball to move up at the same rate as the camera. So the ball would roll up, but the camera would not. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a little trigger here. We're going to put a little invisible collider box. And what it's going to do is it's going to tell the orb to take on a different velocity. That same velocity will also be taken on by the camera. So if you recall, at the very beginning, this was set to 004. This was also set originally to 004, but the horizontal can change. That's okay. It's really this and this that matters. So right now they still match. So what we're going to do is we're going to create what's known as a static variable and make sure that the Y, because that's what changes when something moves up, okay, it's the Y-axis, we want to make sure that that moves at the same rate. So let's create a GM script, a Game Master script. Nothing special about calling it GM, but it will remind us what we're going to use it for. We're going to use the GM script to track some static variables. So let's go ahead and open that up. Now, you've already seen some variables. These, if you notice, they say public and then the type of variable. There's no word static in there. These variables are accessible only to these objects, the object that the script is attached to. So, by creating a static variable, it will be accessible to all objects. So, public, static, and we'll call this vertical velocity, so VERT, and it will also start at 0, and it's public, static, and we'll use a float in case we need to use decimals. So we'll save that, and now for move cam, we can use that variable. So we have to say where it is. It's in GM, and then we say what the variable name is, and it is vertical velocity. There it is. Move orb, similarly, GM dot vertical velocity. So when we make a change to this variable, it'll automatically affect both the camera and the orb, except for one thing. This only gets done at the start. So we are going to really need this to constantly be happening, so we'll move that to the update section. Really don't need it in both places now, so we can wipe that out. Okay, so we made this change, and since it's a fundamental change with the way a velocity is being calculated, or should I say a vector within that velocity, let's just go ahead and run it again to make sure we didn't break anything. Nope, looks fine. It's still within the same, they're still synchronized. Okay, so now we're going to game object, create empty. We want it to be right at the bottom, or the base, shall we say, of the intersection. And actually this isn't lined up, so it looks like it is, but 0x, 0y, there we go, and 32, 30, 28. Should that be at 1? Okay. And we'll call this ramp trigger. So short for ramp trigger. Okay. It is going to have physics 2D. Well, let's stick to physics rather than physics 2D. So physics, and it's a box collider, and we'll shrink the size. Doesn't have to be so deep, so 0.5. Just rotate this around, make sure that should be right. So, what's going to happen? Well, it's going to be a trigger for one thing, because we want the ball to be able to pass through it. And what we want to happen is that new static variable is going to get changed. So when it passes through here, the orb will then start traveling vertically as well as the camera. So what we're going to do is move orb. So again, in the on, actually we can't. We can use. We can't use on collision because it's actually a trigger. So we actually have to create a similar area. So void. What we could do is we could delete the object, but it's important to know the difference between a collision and a trigger anyway, so we'll do it this way. So on, trigger, enter, and it's collider as opposed to collision, and other. And very similar, if other dot game object dot name, whoops, so dot name equals ramp trig, sorry about that, ramp trig, which is the name of the object we just created. We want something to happen. What do we want to happen? We want that new variable gm dot vertical velocity to be set to something. We want it to be set to, let's do 2. Now, this is going to work briefly, and then it's not going to work, because what happens is it's going to shoot right off the ramp, so we're going to have to add a timer. Or what we're going to do is we'll put another gate at the top. See? Stayed in sync. Perfect. So let's call this ramp bottom trig. Come back in here and change this to ramp bottom trig. Save that. Shouldn't have to run it again. That was a minor change. But now what we do is we'll copy that trig, or I should say that object, paste it, we'll slide it up to the top, and we'll call this ramp top trig, and go into the script, and I'm going to copy this using it's a similar function. So again, it's in the on trigger enter, but this time we're looking for ramp top trig, and this will be set back to 0. And just to make sure it's working, we will add a new block. So cube middle, copy, paste, and then we'll just, we'll keep that for now. And there we go. It let's extend that out actually just to make sure. I'm pretty certain it was fine, but we'll extend it out just to be certain. Yep, that's fine. It's not going further. Just as we added a collider for the pit, we're going to add colliders to the left and right of the ramp. So if you push left or right too soon, it'll be like an instant death. So let's go to game object, create empty, and we'll bring that to, where do we want this? We want this to be at 0, and we want this to be at 0, and let's raise this up, and let's get more of a top-down view. So add component, physics, box collider, and let's make it z-axis 3. Maybe it should also be 6 if it's using standardized sizes. 6 looks a little bit much. And again, it depends how forgiving you want to be. Alright, so now we can see that's in the wrong place. So we need that to move in. Okay. So let's call this, actually it doesn't matter what we call it now that I think about it, because we'll just use the tag lethal. So we need a second one, so one on each side. can always rename these later. And the main thing is they're tagged as lethal, and this is tagged as lethal. And I believe so it might not be vertically correct. Oh, you know something? I extended its width. Actually, no. It got killed at the top. Alright, so I don't think this is covering everything that needs to. Let's rotate. Yeah, see. It's not covering everything, it's only at the very top, so I'm gonna lower that. And we have to, that should be scale. Actually, no, not scale yet. It is the box collider I want. So 2, 3. And we'll do the same thing. We'll delete the other one and then just copy and paste this. It already has the tag. So let's see if that one is 1. Then X should be -1. Have to check to see how that's lined up. Okay, that one's working, so the other one's probably just not lined up quite right. And the other thing is when you're going up the ramp, if you push left or right, and it's still not quite right, it's taking too long. Okay, so almost done, just gotta get the positioning right. The question is, why isn't it? Alright, so it looks like that needs to push in a little bit more like that. This, oh yeah, so this one's still off. It's like I was saying, that's why it's so important to have easy math, but unfortunately once you go up the ramp it kind of messes things up a bit. Alright, so now I believe that should do it. Alright, let's try this one more time. Yes, that's much better. Good. Yep, good. Now what you can do is you can make the collider a little bit more narrow. You'll still be an instant kill if you go off the edge, but rather than have it disappear so quick, if it happens too quickly, the player might not realize what's going on. So what you can do is you can move both of these out ever so slightly. So what you can do is actually you can change the size. So right now it's 3. You can make it say, actually, that's X. So you'd make it 0.9. And this one seemed okay. It was the other one that wasn't quite right. They're not lined up as precisely as they should be, but you get the idea that you're basically using a collider. Just as you used it for the pit, you're using the colliders on the left and right side of the ramp. So, alright, that should do it for this lesson then.